Hey Neil, nice to meet you.
Same here.
What is it that you do at Netronome?
So I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders, along with our chief architect, and been around for a little bit more than 10 years now.
Okay. What are you working on?
We are working on, and we have always, as a company, we were way ahead of the market. So we believed that there was a very important aspect for commercial off-the-shelf products in the networking domain. So essentially we invented, that's the way I would like to view it, software-defined networking.
Wow.
Long before anybody else was talking about it.
Or before it was called software-defined networking.
Exactly,
Right.
long before that.
Yeah.
So we applied that to the sort of the appliance business, to next-gen firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and so on.
What are the challenges that companies who are trying to implement software-defined networking on a server, what are the challenges that they face today, and how are you helping them with those?
Unfortunately today, the situation is that we do not have that infinite scaling, the old Moore's law scaling. Every 18 months you get double the performance for the same money.
Right.
That game is not with us anymore.
Right.
So fundamentally, 3 cycles is just not appearing.
So the chip's the bottleneck?
It's not really the chip which is the bottleneck, it's just simply that you don't have enough computation resources to do everything in software as per the normal models.
Right.
You know, it's the old style models which got a lot of people onto the scale out model.
Right.
So what has happened is that obviously a lot of the hyperscale guys have run into this because of the scale of their operations and everything else. They found a lot of ways to solve the problem with their own proprietary silicon, augmenting the x86s in their data centers. The carriers are starting to find out that this is a similar issue as they are moving into cloud-based SDN solutions within the carrier environments.
Right.
And this is now brought to fore the whole sort of market for server-based networking. Some people refer to it as smart NICs inside the server. If you want to boil it up to the sort of general market, I would define that as heterogeneous processing.
Yeah, okay.
Away from the sort of homogeneous processing that we had before, where everything was done by, say, the main server processor. Instead, we are adding co-processors around the edges.
Would you say it's still? Would you say you are still part of the white box trend in
We're
networking?
very much part of the white box trend,
Interesting.
the COTS server trend.
Yeah.
And software-defined everything, because
but you're adding into that.
We're adding into that to essentially think about it as augmented white box.
Okay, so augmented white box. Augmented white box. That's a great and very resonant term. What are you adding in there? Which problems specifically are you solving? Is it performance or security? Is it some of everything?
Yeah, performance is a key issue. Security is another one. But I was just with a key partner and player in this segment of the market this morning, and he said, every customer that I go into, the number of cores which we consume for the software-defined networking is their biggest issue.
Okay.
The fact of losing 12, 14 cores to do 40 gigs of network throughput is just not acceptable.
Why? Because it's too expensive?
It's too expensive. You're losing half the performance of your server.
Why not just add more servers?
The fundamental thing is it costs a lot of money. So the CapEx issue of that is a huge concern. You can imagine if you lose half the servers that you have just to do networking. Yeah. And that's the first and foremost problem we solve. Right. We consume 1 core versus in an equivalent we can publish all the benchmarks, and we do publish all the benchmarks, versus say 12, 14, etc. cores, which you would be consuming in the more traditional way to achieve the same goals. And then you can't even achieve the same performance as we do.
And the solution comes as software, but also a NIC?
It comes as a smart NIC. Okay,
and that has your own silicon on it?
This is our own silicon on it, yes.
And that's what you've been working on for 10 years?
Absolutely, and the silicon is fully programmable. So that's a very important point. We give you a vehicle and then give you the tools to go modify the vehicle if you want to. That would probably be a simple
That'd be a
analogy,
better analogy for
of how it is. So it's production-ready software. You can deploy it in your network. You can get going. You can do all kinds of things, but you know you're not painting to a corner.
Right.
We can make the modifications rapidly. We can add new protocols. We can add new overlay structures without anything, because everything's soft.
Yeah, and I mean, we know one thing, which is that the amount of capacity that service providers and enterprises need is always going to continue. Do you feel like you're going to have to respin the silicon at some point, or how long is the current generation of performance going to last your customers?
That's a very good question. So the current generation can address the sort of 10 gig, 25 gig, 50 gig, 40 gig,
Okay.
and 100 gig markets.
All right.
And we essentially have silicon right across that space now.
Wow.
So it's available in production right now.
Neil, where's the biggest opportunity for you right now? Is it telco data center? Is it enterprise cloud? Is it something else?
That's a very good question. Once again, the critical issue is that a lot of this sort of heterogeneity originated in the top 3 hyperscale data center vendors, because they just had to do it. Now what's happening is that you have the next tier, as a lot of carriers are starting to say, I want to use a cloud-based solution in an NFV, SDN type structure to actually deploy my new services on.
Right.
We have a lot of efforts. There's things which is going on, I know, by AT&T called the Central Office Reimagined as a data center cord. And there's a number of other people. I think it was in light reading, I think I read that Verizon's joining Cord as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've had pronouncements and announcements by, say, Ericsson at MWC last year in terms of cloud SDN and driving that as a new driving direction. We know that the whole Open vRIA router environment, the so-called Contrail or Open Contrail stuff from Juniper, all of these things are moving into the carrier networks. And then there's the other large number of cloud vendors that are supplying services to their customers, whether it be IBM, Apple, etc. That's not part of the primary top 3, if I could put it that way.
Yeah.
And so all of those form a next tier. Yeah. And then the last tier is obviously as the large enterprises that will also deploy the same cloud-like technologies in their own data center infrastructures.
Right.
Now, there is a lot of people would say Amazon will take over the world and everybody will just use Amazon and so on. I think I'm old enough to realize that that's probably not what will happen. Right. You'll get a balance. Amazon's going to be very important. Yeah. Other people will be important. There will be specific people with specific applications which they'll drive through into the market, etc., like Ericsson's cloud SDN environment.
Well, I mean, you anticipated my next question, and I mean, your answer, I think, is the right one. It's not that simple. I mean, AWS isn't going to take over the world, but we do know that the future of the world is a cloud, right? And
hallelujah.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it seems to me that what you are doing is providing a fundamental ingredient to enabling those cloud networks, whether it's in the enterprise or in what we would call telco cloud now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You must have quite a lot of people knocking on your door in terms of the large, the giant equipment manufacturers. Aren't they interested in what you're doing? What's your plan for the company?
Yeah, so fundamentally we have very significant interactions with a number of customers. Now, to be very clear, these new products just became available at the end of January, so they're in full production, available today, but it was only just now. So we own more than 10 key POCs with some of the large players as we speak.
Great.
We have, in part of some of our announcements, we've talked about working with the vRouter stuff from Open Contrail and so on, and being a part of that environment, and working alongside Juniper in that regard. And there will be more announcements and so on that we will make over the time in the next many months as these things roll out.
Well, your timing's great. Are you lucky, or are you just good? Or I mean, you spent 10 years working on it, but now you're right in the middle of the hottest part of the next generation communications market. You must be pretty happy.
I've done a number of startups, and I always say I've never been wrong about a technology trend, but timing is a problem.
Okay.
I tend to be, and me and my partners tend to be way ahead of where the market's at, but the market has caught up with us. I think the 451 groups put it well last year, is that the market's eventually caught up with Netronome.
Okay.
In terms of COTS servers into networking and everything else that's going with it. So I'll always take the luck.
Yeah, me too. I tell you, Neil, it seems like a really interesting story. I mean, it's great to meet you today. We're looking forward to helping tell the story. I mean, I'm fascinated to hear about some of the customer case studies and hear, in more detail about how this is getting deployed. But congratulations, it sounds like it's going to be a huge success.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.